This is the kind of family drama no one wants to admit exists. At my daughter's engagement party, her fiancé's parents welcomed me with smiles that barely hid their judgment. Everyone was chatting until his father suddenly froze and looked straight at me. "Aren't you the business mogul who quietly bought the tech firm downtown?" he asked, eyes wide. I couldn't help but smile at his surprise. If you're watching this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments if you've ever faced a moment like this. I'm curious how far these stories go. My name is Laura Bennett, though most people just call me Laura. For the past 12 years, I've perfected the art of blending in, quietly living life without drawing attention, a skill that turned out to be more useful than I ever imagined. My daughter, Sophie, had been dating Andrew for nearly a year, and before today I had met him only twice. Both encounters were short but intense, filled with pointed questions about my lifestyle and financial situation, as if my modest home might hide some secret fortune. The engagement celebration was beyond impressive. The Harrison estate sprawled across 60 acres of pristine gardens and rolling hills in Maryland, complete with a private hall capable of hosting 400 guests. Every corner seemed designed to impress, and the catering must have cost a small fortune. Sophie walked through the crowd in a gown that looked like it was made for royalty, sparkling under the afternoon sun, while Andrew couldn't stop smiling. He looked like a man who had finally found his happiness. I had carefully chosen my own outfit, a classic teal dress from a boutique I trusted, accented with my grandmother's gold bracelet. Nothing ostentatious, nothing to draw undue attention. I had learned long ago that true discretion comes from blending in seamlessly. A mother living quietly, comfortably, and independently, relying on her career savings and a small inheritance from her late husband. The ceremony itself was breathtaking, yet I noticed Andrew's mother, Victoria, subtly assessing me, as if I were a piece of art that didn't quite belong in their curated world. After the initial greetings and polite smiles, the tension in the room was palpable. I had always known that stepping into Andrew's family world wouldn't be easy, but the reality hit me harder than I expected. His father, Mr. Harrison, kept glancing at me with a mix of curiosity and disbelief, as if he were trying to figure out whether I was really who I claimed to be. Every time he looked away, I could feel Sophie nervously fidgeting beside me, trying to smooth over what she probably sensed as a brewing storm. The party was set in a grand ballroom with crystal chandeliers casting soft light over polished floors. Servers in crisp uniforms floated around, offering champagne and canapes, while classical music played in the background. At first glance, it was a picture-perfect family celebration, but I had learned long ago that appearances are often deceptive. Behind the smiles and laughter, there were silent competitions, subtle judgments, and unspoken questions that could pierce deeper than any harsh word. As the evening progressed, Andrew's mother, Victoria, began a subtle but relentless line of questioning. "Laura, tell me about your work. What keeps you busy these days?" Her tone was polite, almost sweet, but I recognized the underlying skepticism. I chose my words carefully, explaining that I ran a small consulting firm specializing in local startups, making sure to emphasize the modest scale without revealing too much. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, and I could sense her mental calculations of whether I belonged in this elite social circle. Meanwhile, Sophie seemed oblivious to the tension. She floated from table to table, introducing me to distant relatives and old friends, her excitement practically glowing. "Mom, you'll love Uncle Martin. He has the best stories about the early days of the family business," she whispered as she tugged me toward a tall man with a booming laugh. I smiled politely, trying to appear relaxed, even though my heart raced. Then came the moment I had been secretly anticipating. Andrew's grandfather, a stern man known in the family for his shrewd business acumen, approached me. He paused, scrutinized me from toe to toe, and then, with a sly smile, said, "I've heard of you. People say you have a very unique way of managing things behind the scenes." I nodded modestly, giving nothing away. His eyes twinkled with curiosity, and for a moment I thought he might see right through me. Throughout the evening, whispers circulated like invisible currents. I caught snippets of conversations mentioning the mysterious entrepreneur and the woman who quietly changed the local business scene. I remained composed, sipping my tea and nodding politely, but inside I was exhilarated. I had spent years mastering discretion, and tonight that skill was being put to the ultimate test. Sophie's excitement only grew as the evening went on. She proudly introduced me to Andrew's cousins, friends, and colleagues, often sharing little anecdotes about my life in ways that made me chuckle and occasionally cringe. Mom was always the quiet one, but she's brilliant with people, Sophie said to a group of young professionals. I smiled, letting her take the credit, knowing she had no idea how true that statement really was. The climax of part one came during a toast led by Andrew himself. He raised his glass and looked at both his parents and me. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and especially my mom," he said, smiling warmly. "Her guidance and support mean more than words can express." The room erupted in applause, and for a brief moment I allowed myself to feel the warmth of belonging. But I knew this was only the beginning. The real challenges and the subtle tests of character were still waiting. After the toast, the evening shifted in energy. Conversations became more casual, but the subtle undercurrent of scrutiny didn't disappear. I noticed that Andrew's aunt, Claudia, had taken a seat across from me, her eyes flicking repeatedly toward my hands, my outfit, and even the way I held my glass. It was obvious she was sizing me up, not for compliments, but for inconsistencies, any tiny detail that might betray me. I reminded myself to remain calm and composed. These moments were when experience and patience mattered most. Dinner was served in courses, each more elaborate than the last. The chef had outdone himself with delicate plates of seasonal vegetables, tender cuts of beef, and desserts that looked too beautiful to eat. I made polite conversation with the guests at my table, asking questions that encouraged them to share their stories, subtly listening for any hints about the family dynamics. Everyone seemed polite on the surface, but the glances exchanged across tables betrayed hidden judgments. I smiled internally. This was exactly the kind of challenge I had trained for. As the main course ended, Andrew took my hand, leading me to a quieter corner of the terrace overlooking the estate's gardens. The night was calm and the stars glittered faintly above. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. I smiled reassuringly, brushing away any hint of tension. "I'm fine, Andrew, just observing," I replied, savoring the rare chance to step away from the intense focus of the dining room. Meanwhile, back inside, the subtle games continued. Victoria approached a group of guests near the grand fireplace, speaking in hushed tones while casting occasional glances at me. I caught fragments of phrases like, "She's sharper than we thought," and "I wonder how much she knows." Each word confirmed what I had long suspected. My reputation preceded me, even in circles where I had chosen to remain invisible. By the time dessert arrived, the atmosphere had shifted slightly. Guests had relaxed, laughter ringing through the room, yet I sensed a lingering tension. I noticed Sophie whispering to Andrew, probably pointing out minor social missteps by the guests, and I chuckled quietly. It was comforting to see her carefree spirit, but I reminded myself that my focus had to remain on navigating this complex web of social expectations. Suddenly, an unexpected moment arrived. Andrew's father, Mr. Harrison, approached me with a slight smile and a twinkle of curiosity in his eyes. "Laura," he began, his voice measured, "I've been hearing intriguing things about you. Your reputation as a strategist precedes you. I must admit, I'm curious to see how you handle our family's challenges." I met his gaze steadily, acknowledging the compliment while carefully revealing nothing. "I appreciate your kind words, but every family has its unique dynamics, and I'm just observing tonight." As the night drew toward its conclusion, the real test appeared. A distant cousin, known for his blunt opinions, sidled up to me with a glass of wine in hand. "So, Laura," he said, leaning in slightly, "you must be the woman everyone whispers about. Is it true that you've been quietly investing in local businesses? People are fascinated by how someone like you operates without drawing attention." I gave a small smile, nodding just enough to acknowledge him without confirming too much. "I like to support initiatives quietly," I said, letting the words hang in the air. The night ended with Andrew guiding me back toward the main hall, where soft music played and guests began to disperse. Though outwardly calm, I could feel the mental calculations of the family, the silent debates about who I was and what I might represent. I had maintained my composure, yet I knew that every word, every gesture had been carefully analyzed. Before leaving the terrace, I allowed myself a quiet moment of satisfaction. The first part of the evening had tested my ability to remain poised, patient, and strategic, but the story was far from over. In the coming hours, more complex challenges awaited: subtle manipulations, whispered insinuations, and the need to navigate each with precision. I felt a thrill at the thought. This was the environment I had prepared for my entire life, and tonight it was proving just how effective those years of careful observation had been. The next morning brought a quiet tension. Breakfast was served on the sunlit veranda, with the aroma of fresh pastries and brewed coffee filling the air. Guests trickled in slowly, some chatting casually while others cast furtive glances toward me. I chose a seat near the edge, giving me a vantage point to observe interactions without seeming intrusive. Every gesture, every tone of voice mattered. The game was still very much on. Andrew joined me, his plate piled high with fresh fruit. "Mom, don't let them get to you," he said softly, sensing the subtle scrutiny. I smiled, placing a reassuring hand over his. "I know, Andrew. It's part of the experience," I replied, enjoying the warmth of the morning sunlight and the calm before the day's next challenge. Soon, Victoria entered the room, her smile carefully measured. She greeted me with an almost too sweet tone, holding a silver tray of croissants. "Laura, it's so nice to see you again," she said, her eyes scanning for my reaction. I accepted her greeting gracefully, masking any hint of my internal assessment. Every smile, every nod had to seem natural. It was a delicate dance, one I had performed countless times before in situations like this. By mid-morning, a small gathering of family members moved into the garden for casual photographs. Cameras clicked and laughter echoed, yet I noticed subtle power plays in every interaction. Sophie attempted to tug Andrew toward her side for a group photo, while Victoria positioned herself to command attention in the background. I moved fluidly, inserting myself at strategic points to remain part of the images without seeming dominant, all while silently noting the social dynamics unfolding around me. After the photo session, a small group retired to the estate's library, where rich mahogany shelves and the faint scent of aged books created a quiet, contemplative atmosphere. I found a seat near the fireplace, letting the warmth and calm wash over me while I listened to the hushed conversations. Mentions of investments, business strategies, and discreet philanthropy floated around the room. I allowed myself a faint smile. They were talking about the very matters I had quietly influenced for years, yet they didn't realize I was listening firsthand. The real test arrived in the late morning, a casual discussion about the family's recent business acquisitions. I was invited into the conversation, the tone cordial but layered with curiosity. "Laura, you've had experience with similar ventures, haven't you?" asked a cousin, his voice half teasing, half inquisitive. I nodded, speaking in measured, confident tones. "Yes, I've overseen projects quietly, ensuring stability and growth without attracting unnecessary attention. It's an approach that values patience and precision." A few eyebrows rose, impressed, though no one dared to probe further. By noon, I noticed Andrew growing slightly restless. I suggested a walk through the gardens to help him relax, which also gave me a chance to observe the estate from a more personal perspective. Each hedge, fountain, and sculpture told a story of careful curation, an environment designed to project wealth, taste, and legacy. I mentally cataloged details, noting how they might influence perceptions and social maneuvers throughout the day. Returning from the walk, lunch was underway. The main table hosted a mix of traditional dishes and modern fusion cuisine, and conversation flowed with increasing warmth. Yet beneath the polite chatter, I could feel the undercurrents of assessment continuing. Who was trying to test me? Who sought to establish dominance? I responded with tact, steering discussions toward neutral topics, but subtly highlighting my knowledge and insight. As the afternoon sun began to dip, an informal game of lawn croquet was suggested. I agreed, viewing it as another opportunity to observe personalities under casual competition. Every swing, every movement revealed layers of ambition, pride, and social hierarchy. I played with a calm precision, occasionally offering compliments to maintain goodwill, while retaining a quiet, authoritative presence. By the end of the game, I had established myself as both competent and approachable, someone who could navigate the family's intricate social web with ease. Yet I knew the most significant tests were still ahead. Strategic challenges, whispers of speculation, and subtle manipulations awaited, and I was more than ready. Late afternoon brought an unexpected opportunity. A small group had gathered near the estate's wine cellar, discussing rare vintages and recent acquisitions. I followed, not out of interest in wine itself, but because such informal settings often revealed the most genuine personalities. Inside, the air was cool and slightly musty, filled with the aroma of aged oak and carefully stored bottles. Candles flickered, casting soft shadows that seemed to exaggerate subtle expressions. "Lar, you've had a taste for fine wine before, haven't you?" asked a distant cousin, his tone half playful, half probing. I allowed a faint chuckle to escape, keeping my posture relaxed. "I appreciate it, yes. I've learned to enjoy the nuances quietly, savoring complexity rather than spectacle," I replied, letting my words convey both sophistication and humility. A few heads nodded approvingly, while others seemed slightly cautious, trying to gauge if I might reveal hidden knowledge about their family's collection. The conversation naturally shifted to other subjects: travel experiences, charitable initiatives, and personal achievements. I listened attentively, offering comments that were neither too revealing nor dismissive. Each remark was carefully crafted to establish rapport while subtly asserting awareness and intelligence. By the end of the discussion, I had earned a small but noticeable respect, evidenced by the subtle nods and warm smiles directed my way. As we moved back toward the main house, I noticed Jessica observing from the veranda, her expression unreadable. It was clear she was aware of the shifting dynamics and perhaps even trying to influence them. I acknowledged her with a polite nod, maintaining an air of cordiality without opening any avenues for direct confrontation. The game of appearances was ongoing, and I had no intention of playing recklessly. Dinner preparations began shortly after. I excused myself for a brief walk through the gardens, reflecting on the day's subtle victories and ongoing challenges. The evening light cast long shadows across the manicured lawns, and the gentle hum of distant conversation carried a rhythm that matched my contemplative thoughts. Every interaction, every small gesture from the family had been a test, and I had navigated them without faltering. Yet the true climax of the evening was still to come. As night fell, the family gathered in the grand dining hall. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow across polished mahogany tables, and the scent of roasted meats and delicate pastries mingled with the faint perfume of the women around me. Seating arrangements were deliberate. I could sense attempts to isolate or challenge me subtly, but I remained composed. Conversation flowed effortlessly, with topics ranging from travel to business ventures, all interspersed with laughter and casual asides. Midway through the meal, a question arose about Andrew's future plans. I seized the opportunity to guide the discussion subtly, highlighting his strengths while reinforcing the family's perception of our grounded values. Compliments were given to others as well, creating an atmosphere of appreciation and mutual respect. I could see the subtle shifts in posture and expression, the small acknowledgments that indicated growing acceptance. Dessert followed, a lavish display of pastries, fruits, and chocolate delicacies. As everyone indulged, the conversation shifted toward a more personal realm: past experiences, lessons learned, and life philosophies. I shared anecdotes strategically, revealing just enough to establish connection without compromising privacy. Each story served as a tool, reinforcing a careful image of intelligence, composure, and subtle influence. By the time coffee was served, I had solidified my position. My presence was acknowledged, my influence felt quietly, and the social balance had begun to tilt in subtle ways. Yet I knew the most revealing moments, the true measures of character, were always reserved for the quiet, unobserved intervals where intentions and judgments became apparent without words, and I was ready for every one of them. The following morning, I awoke early, long before the household stirred. The estate was serene, bathed in soft golden light, and the gentle rustle of leaves outside my window seemed almost meditative. I took a slow walk through the gardens, allowing the quiet to sharpen my observations. Every detail mattered: the placement of garden sculptures, the subtle hierarchy of flowers, even the order in which staff moved about their duties. These nuances would inform my strategy for the day, revealing much about the family dynamics and individual temperaments. Breakfast was a subdued affair. The staff served fresh pastries and strong coffee, while the family gathered, still maintaining the polished civility of the previous evening. I noticed Jessica attempting to guide the conversation toward trivial disputes, subtle insinuations meant to unsettle me. I countered with calm, precise responses, drawing the conversation to broader, neutral topics, travel plans, charity events, and shared memories of past gatherings. Each answer was carefully measured, designed to diffuse tension while subtly asserting composure and authority. After breakfast, a private meeting was scheduled with the family's financial advisor. I accompanied Dylan, ostensibly to observe, but I knew this was a perfect opportunity to understand the foundation of their wealth and the vulnerabilities within. The advisor spoke with practiced confidence, outlining investments, assets, and charitable contributions, yet I listened with acute attention, mentally mapping connections, evaluating risks, and noting opportunities. Dylan remained focused, absorbing information, while I occasionally interjected with clarifying questions, demonstrating insight without revealing too much of my own experience or knowledge. Later that afternoon, a family gathering was organized outdoors, a casual barbecue by the lake. It was informal, yet every interaction carried weight. As the grill sizzled and conversations flowed, I observed subtle alliances forming and minor tensions surfacing. Jessica seemed increasingly frustrated by my measured ease. Every attempt to provoke a reaction was met with calm acknowledgement or graceful redirection. Children ran about, laughter punctuating the air, while the adults engaged in games and light competitions. I used these moments to blend into the social fiber, reinforcing my presence as a respectful, intelligent, and observant guest. Toward evening, a quiet moment presented itself. I stepped away from the main gathering, wandering near the lake's edge. The reflection of the sunset in the water mirrored my thoughts, strategic, patient, and deliberate. It was here I recognized the subtle shifts that had occurred. The family's perception of me had evolved, and though tensions lingered, respect was beginning to emerge. Small gestures, a nod, a smile, a conversational acknowledgement were evidence that my careful orchestration was working. Dinner that night was more intimate. Seating arrangements were adjusted, leaving Jessica in closer proximity but unable to dominate or unsettle. The meal flowed, with conversation ranging from casual anecdotes to more meaningful discussions about personal values and accomplishments. I shared selective stories, revealing vulnerability just enough to connect while maintaining control of the narrative. By the time dessert arrived, I sensed that my careful balance of humility, intelligence, and subtle assertiveness had shifted the family dynamic in my favor. The evening ended with a quiet walk through the estate grounds. Stars shimmered overhead, and the cool night air provided a sense of clarity and reflection. I reviewed the day's interactions, noting successes and areas that required further attention. Each moment of observation had been recorded mentally, each subtle shift in behavior cataloged and analyzed. As I retired for the night, I felt a growing confidence. The path forward was becoming clear, steps carefully plotted, moves strategically executed. My presence was no longer merely tolerated, it was recognized as influential, quietly shaping the unfolding dynamics. and I knew the days ahead would test this influence further, but I was prepared to meet every challenge with precision, patience, and calculated subtlety. The following morning, a sense of anticipation hung over the estate. I sensed that today's interactions would be pivotal, shaping the perception the family held of me. Breakfast was again a carefully orchestrated event. The table was perfectly arranged, the staff attentive, and every conversation carried subtle implications. Jessica tried once more to assert dominance, her questions pointed and her tone tinged with condescension. I responded with calm clarity, answering just enough to satisfy curiosity while leaving strategic gaps for future engagement. Each word, each expression was measured to reinforce composure and intelligence. Mid-morning brought a tour of the family's additional properties. Dylan invited me along, curious about my perspective. As we walked through expansive libraries, art collections, and antique-filled halls, I observed both the grandeur and the vulnerabilities inherent in their lifestyle. Staff members whispered about past disputes and minor conflicts, unaware that I was cataloging every detail. I listened carefully, interjecting occasional comments about shared history or the significance of certain artifacts, which subtly built rapport and reinforced my image as an insightful, considerate guest. By noon, a small luncheon had been organized in the garden pavilion. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled patterns across the table. Conversations meandered from innocuous family stories to more revealing discussions of values, priorities, and personal history. I carefully guided dialogue, emphasizing common ground while deflecting attempts to provoke discord. Jessica's growing frustration was apparent, yet my calm demeanor and strategic engagement kept the situation balanced. Observing Dylan's reactions, I realized my influence was extending, subtly guiding perceptions without overtly asserting control. Afternoon brought an unplanned challenge. A minor accident during a recreational game left one of the younger relatives slightly injured. Panic rippled briefly through the gathering, but I immediately stepped forward with composed assistance. Administering calm reassurance and coordinating care, I demonstrated empathy, resourcefulness, and authority without drawing unnecessary attention. This incident shifted family perception even further. My presence was no longer passive, it had become an essential stabilizing factor in the household. Evening descended with a sense of accomplishment. The family gathered for a formal dinner, a final event designed to celebrate togetherness. My seating arrangement placed me in close proximity to Jessica, but the balance of attention and influence had shifted decisively. Conversation flowed, punctuated by laughter, shared memories, and moments of genuine connection. I skillfully navigated sensitive topics, maintaining composure while subtly guiding dialogue towards understanding, respect, and appreciation. As the night drew to a close, I reflected on the transformation that had occurred over the past days. From a cautious, strategic observer, I had become a quiet but recognized influence within the household. Respect had replaced suspicion, connection had replaced tension, and my presence had begun to shape the family dynamic in meaningful ways. The lessons of patience, observation, and subtle assertion had proven invaluable. Finally, I retired to my room, the estate quiet around me. Stars blanketed the sky, mirroring the clarity and confidence I felt. Every interaction, every subtle maneuver had contributed to a broader understanding, and I knew that the foundation was laid for the resolution yet to come. I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction, aware that influence achieved through patience, insight, and careful strategy was the most enduring of all. Tomorrow promised further challenges, but I was prepared. Every move had been calculated, every moment observed, and every reaction anticipated. I had navigated scrutiny, subtle antagonism, and unspoken tension with poise and intelligence, and as I drifted to sleep, I knew that the family's perception of me had shifted irrevocably, quietly, profoundly, and permanently. Sophia finally found her voice, though it trembled slightly. That doesn't change the fact that we're a family now. We should be working together, not against each other. You're right, I said, rising and walking toward the window. We should be working together. I turned to face them both. The question is, what kind of work are we talking about? Because here's the truth. You discovered I have wealth, and immediately your strategy was to access it, not to help, not to contribute, but to take control. That's not fair, is it? Sophia protested. Isn't it? I pulled one final file from my briefcase. This is a recording of a conversation you had with your college roommate 3 weeks before meeting my son, Alex. In it, you specifically mention being tired of dating men who can't offer financial stability and seeking someone from a secure family with long-term prospects. The room fell silent. Alex stared at Sophia, shock on his face, while Sophia's eyes darted, calculating her next move. Alex, I said softly, you should ask yourself if the woman you married is truly who you thought she was. I knew, however, that this confrontation was only the beginning. Sophia was far from someone who'd back down easily, and now she knew exactly what was at stake. So what happens now? Alex asked, voice low. I looked at my son, the young man I had raised to value integrity and hard work, and made a decision that would shape all our lives. Now, I said, we see who is truly genuine. The next 2 weeks passed under a tense silence. Alex moved temporarily into his own apartment to process everything, while Sophia left our home that night, making it clear her strategy was now a calculated campaign. She proved more formidable than I had anticipated. The first warning came via phone call. Michael Hayes, my legal advisor, sounded tense. We have a serious problem. Someone has contacted regulators about your investments, suggesting potential violations. What kind of violations? I asked, my stomach tightening. Possible failure to report beneficial ownership correctly, potential insider activity, questions on shell company operations. If they file complaints, it could mean months, even years of investigation, regardless of your innocence. I knew exactly who was behind it. How bad is this? It depends on what they find. Legally, your actions are sound, but complex structures can appear suspicious. Any complaint could trigger massive scrutiny. I hung up, mind racing. Sophia had escalated from subtle manipulation to a legal battlefield, attempting to force a settlement. Then Alex called. Mom, we need to talk. He arrived an hour later, looking older, worn down. Sophia had filed for legal separation, citing potential financial liabilities tied to our family assets. I almost admired her meticulousness. I'm sorry, Alex, I said. Are you really? His eyes held pain more than anger. It feels like you orchestrated this to destroy my marriage just to prove a point. I never wanted your marriage to fail. I wanted you to see the truth before it was too late. By investigating her and destabilizing her family finances, you've ruined everything, he snapped. You're not the mom I knew. I held my ground. I'm the same person who taught you integrity and self-reliance. I never wanted shortcuts for anyone. That's the principle I followed. He absorbed my words silently. And now she's filing complaints with federal authorities, I continued. This isn't over. You need to decide if you'll stand with me or let her destroy everything we've built. The silence was heavy. Finally, he asked, "What do you want, Sophia? What's the resolution?" She looked at her lawyer, then at me. "A formal family financial agreement outlining responsibilities and expectations for everyone involved." "What responsibilities?" Michael asked. "A family trust, shared governance. Mrs. Daniels contributes a portion of her assets, managed by a family council for everyone's benefit." I nearly laughed. "You want me to put money into a trust controlled by those who've been investigating me?" She nodded. "We want fairness." I walked to the window, looking down on the ordinary world, unaware of the financial battle above. Turning, I said firmly, "You have 72 hours to withdraw complaints and cease investigations. In return, I offer a settlement allowing your lifestyle to continue undisturbed." "What settlement?" Mark asked. $5 million, one time. You sign an agreement promising no contact with me or my son again." Shock washed over the room. Alex stared. "Mom, are you serious?" "Yes. $5 million to permanently remove toxic influence. That's the cost of protecting what matters." Sophia repeated slowly. $5 million? Never contact Alex again? Mark did the math, realizing it exceeded what his client could hope for in litigation without years of court battles. The room fell silent. It seemed designed to break up a marriage rather than solve a family conflict. "Mr. Vance, that marriage was already broken. I'm just offering a clean resolution instead of a messy one," I said calmly. Alex shot to his feet. "Mom, stop. Both of you, just stop." He looked around the room, pure disgust written across his face. "This is insane. We're sitting here negotiating the price of my marriage like it's a business deal." "And isn't that exactly what it's been?" I asked softly. He turned to Sophia, voice heavy with pain. "Sophia, I need you to answer honestly. Did you marry me because you loved me or because of my family's wealth?" Silence stretched for nearly a minute. "Alex, that's not fair," she finally said. "It's the only question that matters," I murmured, watching my son's face as he waited for an answer that never came. In that moment, all the years of careful planning, silent protection, and hidden strategy crystallized into one clear, undeniable truth. $5 million, I repeated, looking directly at Sophia, "and I will ensure your parents keep their home, your father retains his consulting role, and you walk away without dragging my family into further chaos. If you refuse," I smiled for the first time since it all began, "you get nothing. Your parents lose the house, your father loses his job, and your legal battles will cost far more than you could ever gain." Mark whispered urgently into Sophia's ear, calculating the absurdity of refusal. Cash in hand versus years of uncertain litigation, it was a clear choice. "I need time to think," Sophia said. "You have until noon tomorrow. After that, the offer expires and the consequences of your complaints will be unavoidable." When the meeting ended, Alex lingered behind. "Mom, did you just buy my freedom from my wife?" he asked quietly. "No, sweetheart. I gave you the tools to make your own decision. If she accepts, you'll know exactly who she is. If she refuses, you'll still know, and I will ensure she regrets ever trying to manipulate our family." Alex looked at me with a mixture of awe and fear. "When did you become so ruthless?" he asked. "I think I always was. I just never had a reason to show it." The next morning, Mark called to confirm the deal. By 5 p.m., the papers were signed and the $5 million was transferred. Sophia disappeared from our lives as if she had never existed. Alex filed for divorce the following week, citing irreconcilable differences. 6 months later, Alex called on a quiet Sunday afternoon. "Mom, I met someone. Her name is Clara. She's a teacher and doesn't know about our finances." How do you know? I asked, because when I told her about our simple life, she said it sounded like a woman who had her priorities straight. I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my chest. She sounds perfect. When do I get to meet her? Next Sunday. But Mom, can you just be yourself, the woman who taught me to work hard and do right without the business persona? I laughed, realizing that after years of hiding, I finally understood the difference between invisibility and privacy. Of course, sweetheart, but if she starts investigating our finances, the deal's off. Deal, he said, and I could hear the relief and joy in his voice. For the first time in months, the future seemed bright and clear. After everything, I realized the greatest wealth wasn't my accounts or investments. It was the freedom to choose how to live, how to spend my energy, and how to be remembered. For years I had hidden in the shadows. Now I embraced authenticity. I sold the apartment where I'd spent the last 15 years. It was full of ghosts, and moved to Santa Fe, a city filled with art, history, and anonymity. There, nobody knew me as the wealthy widow or the formidable mother-in-law. I was just Emily, enjoying farmers markets, local cafes, and conversations with artists. I also started a quiet cultural foundation, the Thomas Fund, in honor of my late husband. We support young inventors and engineers from humble backgrounds, helping them bring their ideas to life. Watching them present projects at international fairs gave me a satisfaction no dividend ever could. Over time, the rumors about my fortune faded. People in Santa Fe saw me as the woman in the blue shawl, attending morning services, handing out groceries quietly, living a simple life of chosen invisibility. My relationship with Alex healed slowly. Awkward dinners and silences gave way to genuine connection. When I met Clara, his new partner, she embraced me without questions about balance sheets or investments. Now I see where Alex gets his fairness and patience, she said, and I felt the bond between mother and son strengthen. That Christmas, our table was filled with authentic laughter. No champagne, no comparisons, just cookies, cocoa, and songs off-key but heartfelt. Looking at the lights, I thought of Thomas and how he would have loved seeing our family free from masks. I won't lie, moments of shadow from Sophia still crossed my mind, but her $5 million couldn't touch my peace, my freedom, or the life I chose to build. I learned I can't save everyone, nor must I carry those who see me as a resource. Now my days are filled with simple joys: pottery, brunch with neighbors, community work. No bodyguards, no armored cars, just peace. Real power lies in choosing your life, not hiding from it. A few months ago, a Thomas Fund scholar approached me, tears in his eyes. "Mrs. Daniels, thank you. Without you, I'd still be stacking boxes. Now I'm finishing my engineering degree." That gratitude reminded me thriving in integrity is the ultimate victory. Yes, I was invisible for 15 years, but invisibility can be a strategy. And the most elegant revenge isn't humiliating those who try to harm you, it's flourishing in their absence. Now, in my 60s, I live in a town of fresh bread and bougainvillea, surrounded by people who judge me by presence, not wealth. Life isn't about perfection, it's about authenticity. If anyone ever introduces me as the family embarrassment again, I have my answer ready. The true embarrassment is wasting life trying to impress others instead of leaving a mark that matters. The story is fictional, but inspired by real events. Names and locations are changed. We share it not to judge, but to inspire reflection. If you were in my place, what would you do? Silence to keep peace, or confront everything to reclaim your voice? I want to know, because every story can light someone else's path. Courage leads to better days. God bless. Meanwhile, I've left 2 of the channel's most beloved stories on the end screen. Thank you for staying until the end.